Hello everyone! So today I am going to go through all of the units that are currently out on the Japanese server for Atelier Resleriana and just give you my opinion on what units you should be saving for, which ones you should be skipping, what you should be just like give you a good idea of what you should be looking out for in the future, right? And just sort of like how you should be spending your resources, what units are worth it, which ones aren't. And so to get into that, first I will explain sort of like the different ways that you will be interacting with the gacha to get these units, right? A big one that people want to know about are tickets. So every single new banner, there will be 2 of these ticket packs in the shop, and they're half price for your pulls, but you get no pity currency, no legend medals. The tickets are only usable on that banner. They will expire, so if you buy them and don't use them, you will lose your gems. So don't try to save them. And I will tell you which banners I think are worth using tickets on. If the units on a banner are good, tickets are worth it, in my opinion. I could tell you all the math, the expected value, whatever. The reality is most people won't pull enough tickets to get to like numbers where expected value comes into play. It's a very personal decision whether you want to use them to gamble or not, because it is gambling. You can choose to forego the tickets and go for the safe route with pity currency, but at the end of the day, this is a game where having a fairly large roster is really convenient. So just spreading out your tickets and getting more units in general, I think is very worth it, especially for free and low spending players. But if you're not comfortable with gambling, just skip them. I will tell you what banners I think they are worth it on though. And then there is also the medal shop. Whenever you do a pull with gems on the gacha, you will get 11 medals, or if they're paid pulls, you will get 6. Once you have 150 medals, you can get any character that's ever been put in the gacha from the shop for 150 medals. This is known as sparking. I will tell you which characters I think are worth it to spark. But honestly, if there's a character that you like really have to have, like your waifu, husbando, something like that, or you just love their kit or anything like that, like listen to yourself. Don't get a unit just because they're meta and regret it later because you really wanted someone else. Like, it's really not a big deal. Meta units are meta for a reason. They're very good. But at the end of the day, all of the normal content in this game, all the stories, score battles, dungeons, etc., all the events, they're clearable with units you're going to have in your box anyways, like 1s and 2 stars and like base pool 3 stars and stuff. So I'm going to go over the units that are meta, that are very strong, give you my opinion on which ones you should pull for. But if there's someone you really, really want, like you think the Christmas outfits are super cute or something, you know, get Christmas Fresna instead. Like, don't worry too much about, you know, adhering to the meta in this game. Because unless you want to tackle like really high-end optional content such as Infinity Tower, you don't need meta units. And even then, for something like Infinity Tower, you kind of just need almost every unit in the game anyways. So I really wouldn't worry too much about following the meta. However, the meta units are meta for a reason. They are very strong. So if you do care about having a strong team, a strong general team, then definitely, you know, pay attention to the tiers. I'm going to tell you my opinion on the strongest units are, who the strongest units are, and who you should save for. Let me have this little tier list right here. All the units in the game. As you can see, there are a lot of them. And so I have my tiers set up like this. In this top tier, the Spark tier, we're going to have the units that I think you should save your legend medals for, according to the meta. These are the strongest general use characters we have in the game on the Japanese server right now. And here we have the gems tier. This will be, you should absolutely use tickets here, and you won't feel bad about spending gems here either because the units are very high quality. And then the ticket tier, these units are, in my opinion, good enough to use tickets on, but you probably don't want to go too far into spending gems on them or spending gems on them at all if you're, you know, free to play. So just tickets for these characters in the skip tier. These are ones I would skip completely, just don't even roll, just do your daily pulls and get out. And the bad tier, which I will explain when I get there, but it's pretty self-explanatory. And to start off, we have the first banner. This banner has already passed on Global. It's Sophie and Pravda. I am doing this banner because, you know, you can still spark these characters, so it's worth putting them in this list. And Sophie goes in this tier. I don't actually think she is worthy of the spark tier with the current units we have on JP, because there are better units. And if I, like, you will never regret sparking Sophie if you wanted to spark Sophie. But there are better general use units than Sophie. She hasn't been outclassed in her role, but I think if you're like a free-to-play player, you should consider saving your spark for someone else. However, if you do spend on the game and you're planning on spending in the future, you know, she's a pretty good spark target. So she will go in this tier. This list will be mostly balanced around players who don't spend much money or any money at all. So yeah, that's where I think Sophie belongs. And Pravda, while a decent unit, will go in the skip tier. She's just doesn't have a solid place in the meta. And this will not be an objective strength list. This is really more like what I think that you should be saving for, what you should be spending on, etc. Because kind of in this game, you're better off having strong units than going for synergies and stuff with your pulls. Just having a solid core of strong units will get you very far, make the game very comfy to play. And some units are just too niche or not quite good enough to sort of be worth going after. I hope I explained that well. But yeah, when it comes to like your free income, we do get a lot of pulls with between daily pulls and tickets and ticket handouts and other things like that. But banner characters are still quite rare, and your pool of them will still end up quite limited. So, all right, next characters. We have the current banner in Global, Claudia and Valeria. So Claudia is our first attacker on this list. She is a very strong burst attacker. I already went over this in my video on her a couple days ago. So if you want to know more about Valeria and Claudia, watch that video. I'm not going to explain them in depth here. And this entire video will just be mostly general overviews, and closer to when these characters come out, I will do deep dives on exactly like their roles, how good they are, more specifically like their objective strength. But if I don't keep this brief, it's going to go on a very long time, so we're going to try and get through this quickly. Claudia, very strong burst attacker, still strong on JP, and she's the strongest attacker we have for a long time, so she goes here. Claudia is too niche, so she goes here. So for this banner, like, if you put gems on Claudia, you won't feel bad about it. If you just put tickets, that's also fine. Sort of balances out. All right. So our next banner, this is the first banner that hasn't come to Global yet, is the Salberg banner. And this banner has Lily and Ellie. Lily is a lightning AoE breaker, and Ellie is, I will rant about her in a video next week when this banner comes out. She is the unit in the bad tier. In my opinion, she is the only useless 3-star in the game. She is the worst unit they've ever made, and you should not even consider wanting her. And because Ellie is so bad, normally I would, like, Lily's gonna go in the skip tier. We already have good AoE breakers in the permanent pool, and she's not good enough to warrant like trying to spend tickets on. So I do think as a whole, the Salberg banner is a skip. So I wouldn't recommend pulling there. So next character, we have Maru. She is in a banner by herself, and she is going to go in the tickets tier with a little asterisk next to her. And she's kind of a funny character. If I was basing her off of her combat utility, I would put her basically in skip. She's an ice attacker and she's not very good. However, She is a meta synthesis unit. She has the single target skill power trait and links to Reuven. So because of her colors and her trait, she is the only character, even currently out on JP, that can create a chain of 3 skill power traits when you use her with Reuven and like a zapping water or something. Because of this, she is very strong for synthesis, and she effectively triples your chance of getting 2 skill power traits on an item. That's how the math works out. She triples your chance at getting good skill power synths. This is very important for endgame. So if you care about the synthesis aspect, consider pulling for Maru. However, I think as a free player, you want good units instead. So I would stop at tickets. She is very desirable for synthesis though. So if you want her for that synthesis utility, there's even an argument for putting her in the Spark tier. However, as a free player, I do not recommend it. So she will go here. Next unit, Halloween Pravda. Halloween Pravda is a support unit. She's a very solid buffer. However, she's very random, so her playstyle isn't super fun to most people, but she is quite strong. Also, as a side note, we have no confirmation that we're actually getting seasonal banners in order, so she might not actually come. This is the 5th banner, right, on JP, but she might not actually come on global. We don't know yet. I think it's about 50-50. But yeah, if she does come, she goes in the tickets tier. One little caveat, one of the memoria on her banner is the best memoria that's kind of been printed to date. It's very strong. However, I would not go memoria chasing unless you're willing to put in money. Memoria just as a whole are not that important. So yeah, put tickets on her, move on. She's very good, but she's not so good that you have to have her. All right, so 6th banner with Wilbel and Neo. So Wilbel is an area fire attacker, and she is like the strongest area attacker we have in the game. Her damage potential is very high. However, area attackers just aren't super desired. Generally, you can get by with single target attackers, more or less for most things. And so you'd kind of rather have strong single target attackers than strong area attackers in the game. So she gets points deducted for that. And I would basically put her in the tickets tier, you know, if you want her. If you don't really desire area attacking for your team, then she goes to the skip tier. She's basically halfway between these two. So despite being strong, she's not really worth pulling for in the current meta. And Neo is a defender that's all about kind of like reducing damage with her skill 2 for your party and healing over time. And she's actually going in the skip tier because she doesn't have taunt. She has to use a skill to get taunt. I think this kind of ruins the purpose of a defender. You really need that taunt always up on your defenders, otherwise your backline is going to get destroyed. And her skills just aren't super amazing anyways. So yeah, she just doesn't have a solid defined place in the meta. She's not that great. Okay, so next, 7th banner, Lydia and Suel. And this is the banner that everyone will be waiting for if you've heard anything about the meta. Lydia is absolutely Spark tier. She's an incredibly strong support unit that has AoE healing and huge damage buffs for your party. She will go into every team if you have her. She is just generically very, very, very good. And she is basically the best character, one of the best characters they've ever made. So she absolutely goes into the Spark tier. It's any character in this tier. Like if you have gems, you should all in all of your gems going for this character. So if you don't get them, you don't feel bad about sparking them either. They're very good and will stay very good for the foreseeable future. They're so good, they're probably not getting power capped. And then we have her sister, Su, which she's a single target attacker and I honestly think she goes in the skip tier. She's really awkward to use, but obviously because her sister is on the same banner, you all in on her anyways. But if her sister wasn't there, yeah, I don't think she's super good. Her gimmick is she gets more damage when she's on full HP, which just isn't very realistic a lot of the time. So when that condition isn't being met, she's kind of bad. So yeah, she's still fine, but she's not great. All right, and next we have the 8th banner with Master Risa and Ampel, and Risa is the other unit in the Spark tier. She is an absolutely fantastic breaker. Her skill 2 is an area break that lowers resistance before it attacks, which means she gets the resistance shred bonus on her break. She also increases damage for your entire party, and her burst is an auto break, no strings attached. If she uses her burst, the enemy will break. Very, very strong character. You can't go wrong with sparking her either and all-inning all your gems. Kind of crazy that these two characters were in back-to-back banners, but that's just how the game is. Kind of relentless. And then we have Ampel. Ampel is a physical attack support unit. His buffs are quite strong, but because he's only for physical attackers, he ends up being fairly niche, so he goes in the ticket tier. However, that doesn't matter when Rise is on the banner. He's still very good, so he's just a bit more niche. He's not quite as general use. Okay, so next we have the Izana and Lyla Chapter 6 banner. Izana is a lightning attacker, and she is absolutely fantastic. She is the first attacker we get in the game that can actually compete with Valeria down the line, like 2 months later, so that just shows how strong Valeria is. Izana's great. She has a lot of really strong critical damage scaling. She's also a lightning attacker, so she pairs well with Lydia, who has even more buffs for lightning characters. She just does almost as much damage on her burst as Val does, and her skill 2 is a really strong area nuke. She's just very solid general use attacker. If you don't have Valeria, you absolutely want someone like Izana. If you do have Valeria, you can consider skipping her, but she's still very, very, very good. So, but you probably won't have many gems left after the onslaught of Lydia into Risa, so it's a little rough, but very good. And Leela is a very strong icebreaker. I'm gonna put her here with Izana because she's also a very good unit. She is the best single target breaker up to this point, and she has good synthesis value. So this banner is very, very strong, Izana and Leela, and if you do happen to have gems left after Lydia and Risa, like, you can't go wrong putting gems here. Next banner, the Christmas banner. Like I said before, for Halloween, we're not sure if we're getting holiday banners in the same order as the Japanese server did. Resna and Patty are both going to go in the ticket tier. They're super cute. I love them. I'm really glad I have them. They're also both very, very good characters. However, Patty is a very strong defender. In fact, if you don't have Sophie, Patty goes up here. So maybe I'll put Patty up here. If you don't have Sophie, Patty is an incredible defender. She has really good sustain. She charges your items faster. She does a lot of damage. She has a lot of damage reduction. She is probably the best pure defender kit we have in the game, but she doesn't outclass Sophie because she doesn't have that really good support debuff, right? But she is a very strong defender if you don't have Sophie in that slot. And then Resna, she's an AoE attacker. We already talked about AoE attackers before. Despite her being very, very good, she loses a lot of value by being AoE focused. And she also loses value because she has an ailment gimmick, which a lot of harder content sort of is immune to ailments or avoids them. She's still very strong. She's a very good character to have. But AoE attackers, less desirable than really good single target attackers like Izana, like Valeria. But yeah, still solid character. She also has skill power trait for synthesis, but it currently doesn't link to anyone, so it's kind of dead right now, but in the future, she may become a meta synthesis unit. And I just love her. She's great. But yeah. All right. Next, for the New Year's banner, another holiday banner, we have Mari. And Mari, because she is on the banner alone, so she has a higher pull rate, she's going to go into this tier. If you don't have the other good single target attackers, especially if you do have either Valeria or Azana, she might go down to ticket tier. Attackers really depend on who else is in your box because they're much more replaceable in general damage wise. Like there's so much resistance shred and stuff in this game that you don't need to focus on having good typing too much outside of course, Affinity Tower. So it's just better to have really, really good units. If you miss Izana and Valeria, Mari is definitely a good pickup. She has a really strong skill too. It hits even harder than Risa. And yeah, she hits really, really hard, but she does have a gimmick where you sort of need to alternate her skills or be consistently killing small enemies. So very strong attacker, but a little awkward to play compared to the others because she has a few conditions on her skills, but she's good. All right, next banner, Chapter 7 release banner. We have a new Aisha and Roman. Aisha is a defender. I think she's skip, personally. Her skills aren't very useful. She has this weird mechanic where she blocks damage under a certain threshold. It's like 25%. So if your party would take a hit that deals 25% or less, it's completely blocked. If it does over that, no damage reduction at all. So this kind of binary, it's either blocked or it's not damage reduction, just isn't very good because it's one, not reliable, and two, if you're only taking like less than 25% of your HP anyways, was that hit really threatening? Did you really need to block it, right? So I think her kit's kind of flawed in terms of usefulness, and I would put her in the skip tier. And then we have Roman. He is a wind attacker. I will put him here in tickets because he is quite strong, and he's the first wind attacker we have after Fierce. So yeah, long time between wind units. He is quite strong, however, he's awkward to play. His gimmick requires you to heal him a lot to ramp up his damage. So he's going to go in the ticket tier, just for being a bit more awkward and not quite as generically strong as these other attackers up here. All right, next banner, the Shally banner. We have Shala and Shalastera, or Lot and Stera. Lot's the green-haired one. She is an AoE strike breaker, and I think both of these units kind of go in the ticket tier. Lot has a weird gimmick where she's like an AoE strike breaker that's trying to build damage for herself. However, she does have good debuffs to improve everyone's damage. So it's like she's okay. And Stera is a support healer that has damage reduction attached to her skills. So she gives everyone like a good amount of damage reduction with her skills, with her passives. For pure healing, she is the best unit in the game. However, Lydia is also an AoE healer, and she has damage buffs attached to her skills instead of damage reduction. So Lydia is generally considered better than Stera. Because of that, you're really looking for high damage most of the time in this game. But Stera's damage reduction is pretty dang potent. I think she's a very solid character. She just doesn't have a well-defined place in the meta at the moment. So, you know, in the future, she could be very good depending on content, or she might fall down even lower if that content never comes. Who knows? But she does have a very solid, coherent, strong kit. So she's pretty good. You wouldn't regret having her. Lot's a bit weaker overall, but she's still good. And then we have one of the most recent banners in JP, the Chapter 8 banner, with Knight Logi and Yuna, who's, spoilers, I guess, one of the later Resleriana characters. And Yuna is a single target attacker, stab. She is going to go here, lower than these other attackers, because her gimmick is she does more damage to enemies under 50% HP. And outside of tower, that condition can be pretty hard to meet. And you just rather have all of your damage online all the time. So Yuna's a bit more niche, harder to use, so she's going to go here. And kind of the same thing for Logi. He's a solid single target breaker. He's a lightning single target breaker. The second lightning breaker we have actually after Lily. And he does really solid break damage, but the break damage is overall a bit worse than Leela. Or maybe fairly similar, I think a bit worse. And he has this weird gimmick where he gives your highest magic character like 100% crit chance after he breaks something. That guaranteed crit for one attack isn't very valuable. We have a lot of other ways to get crit as well. Oh, right, speaking of crit, this Resna loses a lot of value because of the other Resna, the support Resna. But yeah, we have a lot of ways to get crit in the game, including support Resna, who's a very meta unit. So his gimmick just sort of falls flat. And finally, we have Valentine Esa, the newest character. And where is she going to go? I might be a little biased. Okay, she doesn't actually quite belong in the Spark tier, but she is like super, super, super good, like SSS tier unit. She is very, very strong. She's not as generically useful as these two, but she is one of the strongest units they've released so far. And basically what she does is she's a single target breaker, and when she breaks something, she will double the physical damage taken by the target she breaks for the next 2 attacks. So if you have attackers like Valeria, she's really, really good in combination with Valeria, and she's just very strong in general if your box is more physical focused. If you're running characters like Izana or Mari and stuff, she's going to fall off because her buffs won't matter. And we don't have a ton of super high tier physical attackers outside of Valeria. But if you have Valeria, you definitely want Valentine Esa, in my opinion. She's a super, super strong unit. I love playing with her. And yeah, I suppose that's about it. I will do more in-depth analyses on each of these characters closer to their actual release on Global, but this should at least give you a good idea of, you know, what characters are worth saving for, what banners are worth using tickets on. Like, in general, most of the characters in this game are good, and having them won't hurt your box. So it's just generally good to, like, pull with tickets, do your daily pulls. Sometimes you'll get some of these characters, and you'll generally be happy about it because they're really nice. And the characters that, you know, kind of aren't as good are either just, like, the characters you should skip are either just, like, surpassed in their role quite significantly, or they're a little too niche, right? Because you don't want characters that you can barely use, like characters like Claudia, where you need, you know, like 3 other limited characters to make use of her. That's not really very good for like a free account. You're not going to get those other characters. So yeah, that's about it. I guess we'll wrap up. This video's kind of gone on for a very long time, but it is a lot of content to cover. I hope it was helpful. I hope you enjoyed watching. Also, I have a little bit of an announcement. It's not anything like huge, but I did make a VODs channel earlier that I will be uploading VODs from my Twitch to. So I will link that in the description if you're interested in it. It will all be just like all unedited footage from Twitch. And the first VOD there will be a full clear of the Stab Affinity Tower that I did on this account. So if you're interested in seeing what endgame content looks like in this game, sort of like how characters are used, synergies, what type of gear, check that VOD out. It was pretty fun. I had a good time doing it. It took about 9 hours to clear all 20 floors of the tower, which was pretty fast, but I had a good box for it. So yeah, I will link that in the description along with my Twitch channel, so also go follow there if you're interested in watching me play Resleriana and other Atelier games. I play a lot of Atelier games on my Twitch channel. But that is all from me for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all later. Bye-bye.